What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Gotham Season 5, Episode 10, I Am Bane. We're in the end game now. So, very interesting, I guess, as far as finally coming to the end of it and what this has all been leading to. I should have probably suspected that Ra's al Ghul was involved somehow. It is interesting to see that Nyssa is the daughter that they decided to bring in to, I guess, take down Gotham and blow up everybody involved. Uh, but it is kind of funny because I'm just sitting there thinking, Bruce is gonna be like very interested in your sister one day. Just saying. But yeah, so whenever Nyssa got introduced, so that's really when things started to click. I'm like, okay, so this is why she's trying to essentially have the government blow up everything, because that's Ra's plan, is to essentially just kill most of humanity because they consider them evil. And yeah, how it all comes about, pretty straightforward, using Eduardo as Bane now to essentially take down Barbara, who is actually the one that killed her father, but also, I guess, having the general be chipped. I will say the fact that they were able to cover up the fact that he was chipped so quickly, I find it a little bit of a plot hole. I feel like that would be something, either they put it in a different spot and covered it up, or I don't know. I feel like that's something that's a little too unrealistic for me to really buy. I mean, even the fact that they were able to basically sew Nigma's head back on with all of his hair still intact and perfectly fine, I found that a little weird already. But to do this in such a short amount of time, I mean, like, within a few hours, they opened up his head, put the chip in here, and then put it back in without showing any scars whatsoever that Jim could see. So that way, whenever we find out, oh no, he's chipped, it can be like this big reveal, and they'll just essentially let him try to call in the order to stop the bombing, only for him to actually do it because he's been chipped to do so. So, I don't know, it feels a little contrived and convenient that that's how it all played out. I would find it a lot more believable if he was already chipped, like before he got there, basically. So that way they knew it was going to play out in this way, and essentially they figured Jim and Bruce would get out, but this was their contingency plan, as they had the general already chipped, so that way he could just call in the order anyway, even if they convinced him not to. But yeah, so fairly interesting though ending as far as everything being blown up. We also see Barbara, of course, in mortal danger, and I figure she's probably not gonna make it out just because she had a baby girl, and we know Jim has a daughter named Barbara later on, and it'd be very weird to name it after her alive mother, so more than likely gonna be named after her dead mother. I don't know how Lee and the baby are gonna get out of the situation, because Lee is not really a fighter, so there's no way she'd be able to take on Nyssa and Bane whenever Barbara dies. But as far as Selena and Alfred though, I don't really know what they're going for here. Like I, I don't know what exactly they're trying to do, because they've been showing everything is playing out exactly as we expect it to. Everything is leading towards what we've seen before in Batman lore. So that means Alfred's not gonna die. But yet they're trying to make it seem like he is. They even raised a lot of his death flags, with him being like, "Oh yes, I'll guard him as I always do," and "Oh, this is gonna be, you got one more chance to save Bruce," and "Oh yes, I'll probably be retiring after not too long." I don't know. It felt like they were trying to raise his death flags, and then at the end, Bane, I doing the iconic backbreaking, but this time on a pole instead of over his knee. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems weird that they would do this with Alfred and like pretend to be like, "Oh, he might die, guys," when so far everything's played out exactly as it should be as far as people dying and not dying. I don't know if this means he's going to be paralyzed, but that's also not accurate to the comics that we've seen. So I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to change it up here. Maybe they are trying to kill off Alfred and maybe give Bruce something to fight for in the end. I don't know. It seems a little odd. What they were doing with him in this episode. But I think that's basically it. I mean, it was just a lot of plot moving forward. It was all perfectly fine. I do like Eduardo as Bane. I think it's a very good, menacing character, and the voice is also, it's kind of reminiscent of Tom Hardy's Bane, but without the goofiness, like the goofy sounding, Oh, yes, I was born in the darkness. So, yeah, it's got a good menacing sound to it. Penguin and Riddler working together is always just a treat. So, seeing them first go to get Barbara, like the whole, don't put the gun at the baby. I wasn't pointing the gun at the baby. I was just pointing it in a general direction. Yes, but you were pointing the gun at the baby. Well, I'm sorry. Some really good moments and some funny moments between those two. I think honestly that's what's got me so invested is they find a good balancing between making things serious and making things intense, but also finding a way to make me laugh as well. So they've done a really good job of finding that good balance there, and it's why I think the show has done so well in my opinion. But yeah, so two more episodes until the end. I'm excited. I can't wait to see how it all comes to an end. I just see like the pictures on Netflix, and I don't know what to think from the pictures. I'm trying not to read the descriptions, but it's hard for me not to. But I think I have a sense of how the last episode goes, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But anyways, on to the next one. See you there. And now episode 11. They did what? Pretty good. I would say this is the first finale. I think the next episode is going to be much more of a kind of epilogue episode. Again, just based on the picture that I'm seeing and what little bits of the description that I've gleaned. But yeah, I mean, fairly solid ending. The only problem that I have, which thankfully was kind of rectified later, is the fact that after the general was like, all right, I want you to kill all these civilians, and whoever, I can't remember his position, but he was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Bane just comes in, snaps his neck, and just like, all right, does anybody else have a problem? And everybody's just like, no, sir. I'm like, I don't know. It's easy for me, I guess, to say that I wouldn't say anything, but it feels very odd that all the military is just like, oh, okay, we're killing civilians now just because this one guy came in and killed one of our fellow, army men. I'm just gonna trust everything you say now and follow your orders. It seemed a little too easy to me, but thankfully they did rectify it at the end whenever everybody they saw who they were actually gonna be killing, and then they were like, I can't do this, and then turned them on to Bane and the other guy that's there with him. So even though they did rectify it, there is still that frustration that it happened in the first place. We did finally get to see the scene though that we saw at the beginning of the season, and yeah, I mean, all in all, pretty solid. You got Bruce tearing down Wayne Tower. You've got Jim going to help Barbara. She's still alive for now. She did say that Jim should name the baby Barbara. So I don't know. That kind of shocked me that it was just like, no, just name it after me, so that way she knows. Barbara Lee Gordon. She can go to me. She can go to Lee. She can go to you. She knows who she has for help. Seemed a little odd. I honestly just expected them to kill off Barbara and then have the baby girl named after her. I don't know. It seems weird that they had her name her daughter after herself. So I don't know. That's something that I feel like is a little weak. I really assumed we were gonna have an emotional moment where Barbara like sacrificed herself to save Jim whenever they were fighting Nyssa, or something along those lines, but really nothing big happened in this. And on top of that, there were some other little things like, I mean, Penguin, we see how his eye got hurt in this. Grenade exploded basically and tore his eye up. So that was a nice little Easter egg, but even for them, at the end of it, I enjoyed watching Nigma and Cobblepot like help out throughout most of it, but then at the end, they're all of a sudden just like, no, I don't want to just do what I'm told. I don't want to bow down to these people again. All of a sudden, they're just talking about ruling the city out of nowhere. They've only been helping throughout most of this episode. They've been helping fight along. Penguin and Jim, they had their moment where they sort of connected again, and even Nigma came in. He's like, yeah, I'm going to help. So for them to all of a sudden just turn at the end of it feels a little weird. Like, I wish we could have seen something else push them back into that lifestyle, but instead they just decided at the end, no, that this is the lifestyle I want. I want to be a criminal. I want to take all the power and the money, and I want it to all be mine. Just out of nowhere. So that was also a little weak, and I don't know. I feel like it feels very rushed, maybe. I don't know. I would imagine, because the writing team has done a pretty solid job throughout all these seasons of really telling an interesting story, but I feel like there were so many obvious places that you could have gone with all of this stuff that would have been much better. Even if I could have predicted, like Barbara dying, totally could have predicted that if they had done it. However, it would have been much more interesting than just, oh, Barbara names the kid after herself, and also Lee. For Penguin Enigma, I mean, I could have predicted if they decided to go after all of this is said and done, something changes, something happens, maybe they get forgotten in all of it, or something in the battle at the end changes them. I could have predicted that, but it would have been much more interesting than just, oh, they help out, but then at the end they just decide, no, what? No, I want to be a criminal anyway. Just for no reason other than Nigma feels like he's better than the common folk, and Penguin, I don't know, he feels like all the stuff that he had is now stolen by Nyssa, so he wants to take revenge on the city. So there are definitely some problems. I still enjoyed it for the most part. There's some really good scenes, again, some good back and forth moments between characters like Nigma and Cobblepot. Getting to see Bruce, take on Bane with Selina in this, and summon all the bats to basically attack him was pretty awesome. Bruce's whole mission to essentially, I don't know exactly what he's doing. I guess he's just going on a mission to find himself, or I think I missed whatever this was all about. But I can definitely see how Selina would probably be pissed. So I don't know how they're going to handle that, because whenever he comes back, there's a very clear connection between Batwoman and Catwoman. Did I just say Batwoman? Batman and Catwoman. So there's a very clear connection there. I don't know how they're going to rekindle that, since Bruce is clearly just left her with barely so much as a goodbye, leaving her a letter, but she didn't want him to do that. So that seems like a little odd that they're probably going to rekindle the romance somehow in spite of everything that just happened. Because I mean, if I were her, I would be like, no, you just left me. I told you we could do this together. I would be here for you. And you just said no and left. And I get why. I get his thinking is, they're trying to hurt me. Bane and Nyssa were here to hurt me, and you were caught in the crossfire. But it's still clearly not what she wanted. And you just didn't even give a crap that it's not what she wanted. And you just pieced out anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to expect, how they're going to handle their romance in the final episode. But, I mean, all in all, it was perfectly fine. Good acting as well. The final scene between Bruce and Alfred, it did get me a little emotional because, I mean, honestly, this is the end of an era for them. And I'm sure it'll start to hit me a little bit in this final episode. I assume that, I mean, it's going to be that feeling of, damn, this is the last episode of Gotham. Like, what a ride it's been. I really, really hope Jim's got a mustache. I want to see it. I hope he's grown a mustache in this final episode. But yeah, on to the final finale, season finale. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see how they wrapped it up. So let's get to it. See you there. And finally, episode 12, The Beginning. Yeah, I liked it. It was good. It's kind of what I was expecting, because again, when you see in Netflix that the picture is of Jeremiah, like stringy hair and stuff, I figured it was going to be him breaking out of Arkham and doing something, trying to blow up something, and it was pretty much that. The only real issue that I have, and it mainly comes from, again, kind of what I was talking about at the end of the last episode, is this whole thing with Nigma and Penguin. I again love the camaraderie, love the back and forth between them, and they're still two of probably my favorite actors in the entire show. But just their story, I feel like could have had a little bit more to it instead of just being a little bit of a throwaway gag in this episode. Because again, end of last episode, suddenly now they want to take over the city, and then we don't even really get to find out what put Ed in Arkham and Cobblepot in Blackgate. It just sort of happened. And then Oswald's getting out of Blackgate in this one, and then I guess Nigma gets broken out by Jeremiah in disguises, well, not in disguise, but pretending to be Penguin breaking him out. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I would have liked a little bit more. However, I get the fact that it's not really their story in this episode. They're more of the side story, just showing that they are out and about and they're doing their stuff because that's where the show wants to leave it. And also, again, throwing in a few little good running jokes, like them getting hung up on the street light, and then whenever they see Batman jumping over the building, they're like, "We'll do it tomorrow. We'll go get him tomorrow." Yeah, let's just go for now. So good funny jokes, but yeah, as far as their story is concerned, definitely not as interesting as I wanted it to be. Um, for Jeremiah's part of the story, I kind of already figured where it was going, but I don't know. It still feels a little weird. Like the setting the bomb in Wayne Tower makes sense, but the fact that he went after Barbara and Barbara's daughter and then tried to kill her and kill Jim in the process, I don't really get that. I mean, I guess he did sort of blame them as well as Bruce for everything that happened, or maybe he just wanted to get at Bruce by killing, people that he knew Bruce was close to. But that part of his plan didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and just the fact that I don't know, it felt very like Barbara gets shot, but she's perfectly fine, and then she stabs Echo, and then he kills Echo, and I'm just like, okay, so I guess they're just showing that eventually he's gonna go get Harley Quinn as his helper now that Echo's out of the picture. Although it looked like Bruce killed him. Like they never confirmed whether he was still alive or not, but I mean that first batarang went through his hand, and then the second one went into his head. So unless he like nicked him in the head to knock him out, it looked to me like he got hit square in the head, and that thing is dug in there, and he might be done. And they never confirmed. Like I expected Harvey to be like, "He killed him," or like I don't know. It seems weird that they didn't confirm whether or not Jeremiah was dead from that blow. It just seems odd. Um, but I mean, that whole final scene with Jeremiah though was interesting enough. A couple funny references. He's like, "How about you call me Jack?" I'm like, I see what you did there, because not only Jack Nicholson, but also pretty sure Jack White is one of like the most well known Joker aliases. But I mean, there are just a few things about what happened with Barbara that felt maybe a little tacked on. I felt like it could have been more about stopping the bombs, and then he shows up there, and maybe when the bombs don't go off, he's like, "Well, you ruined my plans, so I'm just gonna have to kill you all," instead of going off on this other random side quest that leads to Ace Chemicals. So I don't know. It wasn't bad. I just feel like it could have been a better finale. I feel like there could have been more emotional moments. There could have been more real feeling to it. The fact that we don't get to see Bruce interacting with anyone, I don't know. I'm not really sure why. Like he interacts with Selena a little bit at the end, and it was a pretty good scene. But I don't know. It feels. Did they just not want to get like an actor that looked like they already had to find an actor that looked like Selena, so they didn't want to find an actor that looked like Bruce now, an older Bruce. So they just got somebody that at least had a similar jawline and put him in a mask. I don't know. It seems a little weird that we didn't actually get to see Bruce returning, especially since I feel like now it makes it even more obvious that he's probably this vigilante that's going around beating up bad guys because, well, Bruce just got home and all of a sudden this vigilante pops up at the same time. And Bruce is surprisingly very busy for somebody that doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do. I wonder if there's any connection there. So I don't know. I just feel like that's maybe a missed opportunity. Maybe they just felt like it fits Bruce because he's a lot more of a recluse, and I don't know. Just a few things here and there throughout these final couple episodes that I feel like could have been a bit better, could have been a bit better handled. Storylines that maybe could have been more interesting, more emotional, and they maybe took too many cheap options, too many easy options. I mean, Nissa doesn't even show up in this, so I guess she's just out there to fight someday. And I don't know. I feel like that's something that, if I'm being honest, is kind of a problem that this show had throughout. It's just this feeling that they're stuck and they're bound by what's kind of common knowledge for Batman lore. Stuff like Bane being out there, and Penguin and the Riddler being out there, and the fact that Gordon doesn't marry Barbara, but his daughter's named Barbara. Just these things that are in the Batman lore that the show clearly wanted to keep true to. However, that means that there's a lot of stuff that is a lot less interesting when you get to the end of it, because it's like, well, all these characters that they're facing off against, they're not dying. They're staying alive, they're staying out there, they're staying out and about, so Batman can fight them later. And I get that's part of what this show is leading to, is Bruce becoming Batman, but it still does feel like there's a lot of, I guess, unresolved issues that you have to leave open to lead towards what is going to be the Batman mythos. Or not mythos, but just, another Batman story. And that's where I do kind of wish they'd either maybe made him Batman sooner. Like maybe they should have done this time jump after a few seasons, and maybe we have a few seasons of him being Batman. That way we get to continue, because I like a lot of these storylines. I like a lot of the connections and the chemistry between these characters, and I feel like now a lot of their stories don't get to end because, well, the only way for them to end for most of them is for one of them to die. But they can't do that, because if they kill off a character like the Penguin or like the Riddler or Barbara, which they still could have killed off Barbara Keene, but you can't kill off any of these characters because they show up later. But that also means that these storylines are going to go left unended. And I did worry that was going to be something that was going to happen, and sure enough, it's something that did happen. So it's definitely something that it kept this ending from being truly fantastic. Like, there's still a lot of stuff that's good about it. Like, the acting is still phenomenal. The action still pretty good for, being a cable show. They get away with some decent stuff. But yeah, I mean, just the story itself, I feel like is what's hindering this final episode, and what's keeping it from being just a really, really great finale. It's good. It's okay. I like seeing people in the future. I like some of the little in jokes. The mustache. I'll shave that thing off your lip. I don't know. I enjoyed that stuff, and I think a lot of Batman fans would enjoy that stuff. But from a person who's enjoyed the show and who's really liked the characters that they build up, a little different from the comics, but still, for the most part, based on the same characters that we've seen from the comics, I feel like they could have done something either a little differently, or at least given us more after he becomes Batman. So now we get these characters, but we know their backstories now. We've seen them go through these arcs where they have been more connected, and they have been a lot more, I guess, linked with each other. And now we're seeing what's going on now that Bruce has become Batman, and what he is doing behind the scenes, and how does that affect Jim, that he doesn't really get to see Bruce that often anymore, even though they were really good friends, and he was essentially like a surrogate father for him, when Alfred wasn't being a surrogate father. Now all of a sudden Bruce just never sees him, and he never has time for him, and what would that lead to? I feel like that there's some missed opportunities there. So I'm sad that it's gone for several reasons. I'm happy for the most part with how it ended, but I do have a lot of, I guess, unfulfilled thoughts and plot lines and stuff in my head that I mean, I guess this is where fan fiction comes in, but I don't know. I really wish we could have kept this story going a little bit longer, just so we could resolve some of these storylines, and really give some of them an emotional ending and something that fulfills the audience. But all in all, Gotham is still a fantastic show, and despite some of the flaws of the final season, I still think this season as a whole was very solid. It was very good. Storyline, I think, is really where this show can either really hit its heights or have some issues that does drag it down a little bit. Everything else, though, is just really top notch. I mean, the acting, the only one I ever remember having issues with was Jada Pinkett Smith, and she was, obviously now there's other issues that I have with her, but I mean, she was the only one that I felt like was trying to pretend to be crazy, whereas everybody else in this show, I truly believe that they were their characters and that they were absolutely insane. And I feel like that's a job well done for the actors, for the directing. They really brought out a lot of these characters and just their tics, their personalities. I mean, so much about this show really brought these comic book characters to life, and a little bit more of a realistic and gritty sense, and I enjoyed that. I mean, Jim, fantastic lead for the show. He's got that kind of moral compass that he's trying to follow, but he's being tempted to the dark side. And just seeing him become the commissioner after all of this hardship, it was a good setup for the show. And I feel like once they started focusing a little bit more maybe on the villains and what they're doing in Gotham and Jim trying to stop them, I feel like that's when the show found its real footing, to go forward and make something truly fun and enjoyable. But yeah, it was a blast to watch. I fully recommend it if for some reason you've watched my reviews and you're watching this now. Yeah, I mean, absolutely go watch it. And honestly, I kind of want to go back through someday and watch it all again, just because it was quite a journey. Going from an pretty poor season 1, not really sure what they wanted to do with it, and then once season 2 hits, you're fully immersed in the Gotham feel and all of the craziness going on, and suddenly Barbara now is a great character when she was so crappy in season 1, and all these fun villains are going around. It was really, yeah, it was a good show. Sad to see it go. Sad to see it go out on a note that I feel is maybe a little unfulfilled, but that's about it for all my thoughts. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on Gotham? Not just the final season, but as a show as a whole. Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for, other reviews. Check out my channel. Plenty of shows that I'm reviewing. Next up, I think I'm going to hit up my CBS Guilty Pleasure list, like Criminal Minds and NCIS and Bull. Shows that are not necessarily the most hard-hitting or gripping, but they're fun to watch. They're fun to watch and talk about, so that's probably where I'm going to head next with these reviews. But yeah, leave a like and subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys when I see you. Peace out.